Hello everybody, Dan Lucas with Credo here, and welcome to a special outdoor edition of our 50 States in 50 Days. Today we are doing Michigan, and hence I am wearing the Ford hat to show props to the state of Michigan, and thank you to everybody there who produces so many of these vehicles that we use to make all of our lives better, and sort of the unsung heroes of the country, so to speak, there. So I'm wearing this hat in honor of them. I'm also wearing a shirt that is related to our tennis tournament, so definitely going more informal today than usual, but for good reason. We are right in the middle of having our tennis tournament, the Credo Tennis Championships. And actually our website is credotennischampionships.com, and we are in the middle of being outside all week, and we put a lot of hard work into it. It's a great tournament, and we do it for the local community, and it's a ton of fun. So that being said, it is really, really hot out, and I really actually wish I was in Michigan, because I think it's probably in the 70s there. It'd be a lot nicer. But in any case, Michigan was the 26th state admitted to the Union, and it was admitted on January 26, 1837. And when we're looking at Michigan, there's not a tremendous amount of tax credits. I wouldn't. It would be incorrect for me to sit here and say, oh, it's got a ton of exciting tax credits. It's really a great state for that. And that's not really true. However, Michigan is a unique state. And so, again, I think we're looking at this more quality over quantity thing. There's really two pretty distinct policy goals you can see when you're looking at Michigan. And that's one, attracting quality jobs, and to redeveloping distressed areas, which to me makes perfect sense given what I know about Michigan and some cities in Michigan, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very diverse state too. I mean, you have very, very sort of urban areas that can kind of be distressed, all the way to just extremely just sort of palatial and beautiful areas. It's a very diverse state, lots of fun recreation to do, but suffice to say, it's very diverse. In any case, there's another, some of these tax incentives and credits, there's an emphasis on retaining businesses to stay in Michigan. There's an emphasis on attracting businesses from the outside to come in. And they also definitely want to keep manufacturing in Michigan. That's pretty obvious. I can see that by looking at all the tax credits that are going on. But in any case, let's look at, there's basically, again, two types of credits. It's really, a lot of them are around business activity and in employment. Let's see. Let's look at, there's one that's kind of the big one that's called MEGA. It's like the mega credit. It's a mega SBT credit. I'm not sure what SBT stands for. I didn't find that. But it is basically, it's for businesses that are in the space of manufacturing, R&D, mining, wholesale and trade, and office operations. Retail and casinos do not qualify, and they have typically more lenient rules for sort of rural, high-tech, and distressed businesses. It is, let's see, the mega is, again, I said this is their big credit, and you have two different types of credits you can get under mega. So again, you can get ones for different business activities, and you can get ones for employment. Let's see, the credits are discretionary. They can last for 20 years, and you can even get abatements in it. So what I would do is, if I was in Michigan, I would look to see if I was in that eligible business category. Again, the manufacturing, R&D, mining, wholesale and trade, office operations. And if I was, I think this is a broad credit to help just those industries. So you can really dig in and see the details on this type of credit in Michigan. And so my recommendation would be is that if you are in those industries, that you dig into the mega SBT credit and go from there. Because I think it's broad and liberal interpretations, et cetera, beyond the scope of this video. Okay. There's another one that's called the Industrial Property Tax Abatement, and it's very deadline sensitive. So you have to create the district has to be created before any construction commences. So this is really for real estate developers, people that are maybe in real estate partnerships, things like that. Don't think, oh, you always have to be a real estate developer or the single individual doing all the real estate work. It can be that you're an investor in a partnership that is doing this type of work to get some of these credits either directly or just pass through to you through the partnership. You can get this abatement and this property tax for 12 years after completion of the property. Okay, and a lot of times these are the type of credits that you would have to negotiate with local government, but the state is giving this on a statewide basis, and it's just giving it to you right out of the gate. So that's really cool. Let's see. When I read more about this one, it seems like there's a lot of dot I's, cross T things, and sorry about that. A lot of dot I's and cross T things, and you would need to really do a lot of work in advance on this to make sure that you didn't step in any potholes, to make sure that you were, that you had all your ducks in a row before you did this. I wouldn't risk trying to think that I understood this and try to go back and get it later. I would have it really set up in advance, so I wouldn't try to just do this and kind of bet on the comes. That would be my advice on this one. All right, another really cool business incentive is called a Renaissance Zone, and they have 150 tax-free zones spread across 38 countries in the state. And a lot of the zones, that's 15 years and they have to renew it. But if you're a business that's located within a zone, you're going to be exempt from a lot of property taxes, utility taxes, and even small business taxes. Well, that's what SBT stands for, small business taxes. Just put that together. You can also get, let's see, so it says, if you have property taxes, if it's based on, if you've leveraged a piece of property and you have debt on it, the part that's in debt, you don't get a property tax credit on, but any part you have equity in, you can. And then sales taxes, they don't exempt you from. Let's see. Looks like if you're in the Renaissance Zone, which you'd have to look up the map on that to see what zone you might be in, because it looks like they have different tiered credits for different zones. But it looks like all types of businesses qualify for exemption. So unlike the mega credit that we were talking about earlier, you don't have to be a certain type of business. Some cities have tried to disallow certain exemptions, but the statute does not require local approval. Again, it goes back to, this is at a state level, this is not at a local level, and a lot of times these abatements or credits have to be negotiated on a local level, and you do have to apply for it in advance. Okay, so this is another one where it is discretionary and you've got to apply for it in advance. Don't go out and think that you're in a zone so you're safe and think you can come back and get the credits later. Get it set up in advance. And they're always doing amendments in these Renaissance zones, so make sure that you've got the current zone when you're starting the activity, and get it improved in advance, and make sure that there's no amendments that might affect you when you're looking to get your credit. Okay, there's also something called the personal property tax exemptions. This is moving on from the credit we were just discussing, and this again is in certain zones. Okay, and personal property are things like fixed assets, inventory, things like that they would put in like an ad valorem tax on. Ad valorem means based on the kind of value of the actual property, and it looks like they've got tax credits for certain local units, or they call them core communities. You can exempt new personal property to eligible businesses, not retail and casinos. So it looks like you're going to have to look up and see what zones these are in. And you're going to have to see, make sure that you're one of the qualifying businesses. So you're going to have to have two different things there that you qualify for, or two different qualifying sort of factors. But yeah, I mean, if you're paying any personal property tax, I think you're just going to have to look this up and do a little bit of homework on it, because it looks like it's pretty liberal, and you could really, probably easily qualify for this as long as you meet those two criteria from what I'm seeing. Okay, so let's move on to another one. There's the small business tax, SBT credit for industrial personal property taxes. This is a refundable credit, which means you don't have to actually owe tax to get money back, so it can almost be like a grant in that respect. And it's a 15% credit for property taxes paid on industrial personal property. You need to again, I wouldn't just assume you're going to get this and think you can get it later. I would apply for this in advance and do your homework in advance on this one. These are pretty complicated credits in the state of Michigan, and there's a lot of dot I's and cross T's on it. They're very lucrative, it looks like, and you can get them for long periods of time. So it's well worth it. It may not just be year 1; it could be year 1 through 15, and add all those up, and it's a big number. But again, this is almost like one of those, don't try this at home. Talk to Michigan Economic Development, I don't know if it's a committee, I don't have the exact name in front of me, but I would do the homework on the website and make sure that you get these things approved in advance and that you know what you're getting into. There's redevelopment incentives, brownfields, they call them brownfields, and we've talked about this in other states using the same name, the same verbiage. This mega area can grant a small business tax credit for up to 10% of eligible investment in these brownfield sites. These are sites that they're trying to redevelop and bring up from one economic maybe tier to another, try to redevelop, refurbish, kind of build up the area to make it more prosperous, less poverty, more prosperity. And it's discretionary. They have to approve this in advance. So Mega has to approve this in advance for you to get it, and they run out of the actual amount of credit they're allowed to give. So this is one of those where you want to get in on it early because the early bird gets the worm. And let's see. There is some tax increment financing available, which is really cool, which means that you can actually maybe get some pre-funding for tax credits that you will be getting in the future. So that means you can actually monetize some of these things in advance to get some liquidity if you want to use that money to redevelop. So not only will they give you credits for redeveloping property, they'll give you financing in anticipation of those credits to do it. So they're really pushing this redevelopment, just like we talked about in the beginning of the video, as far as wanting to kind of refurbish, redevelop areas in Michigan. Let's see, if they had any other points here I wanted to make. They have some other redevelopment programs. You might want to, some of these might bend your ear a little bit. I'm not sure. I'd have to really dig deeper into them. They seem a little bit more nichey, but there's one called the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Credit. There's the Federal and State Historic Preservation Credit. We talk about preservation credits quite a bit. There's the Federal New Markets Credit. Not really sure what that is, but it looks like you can get some credit for reinvesting in a community development entity, which to me sounds like something that is, taking something from poverty to prosperity. They have neighborhood enterprise zones. It looks like that, with the Renaissance zones that we talked about a little earlier in this video, they have on that piggyback where you can do neighborhood enterprise zones, which you might be able to double up on some of the credits. So there's probably some areas where on a statewide basis they're trying to push it up, and then locally they've decided to piggyback on top of that to push it up even further. So be on the lookout for those. There's a tool and die recovery zone. So if you're in tool and die, you're gonna want to look at that. There's an alternative energy initiative. So if you're doing anything in solar, wind energy, fuel cell, R&D in that area, manufacturing, distribution, things like that, you're gonna want to look at that. And let's see. Don't see anything else really worth mentioning. I think this is, these credits are very, very unique to Michigan, it seems like, and really unique to the policies there. I don't see a lot of piggybacking on some of the federal credits, although that could happen on occasion, but I don't see any intentionality in that area. But bottom line is, if you are one of those eligible businesses in these areas that I mentioned earlier, you need to look in tax credits if you're not getting them, because those tax credits are meant to support businesses like yours, and I think they're pretty liberal with interpretation and pretty generous, and so you're probably missing some credits in some area. If you're doing real estate and you're doing it in historic areas or areas that could be used to build up, I mean, sometimes when you can get property for a pretty good price in some of these enterprise zones or Renaissance zones, and even get more subsidies from the local government. You can get very, subsidized financing to do this, and you can walk into some of these properties that might seem a little risky on the surface, but you can walk into it with so much margin already built into it that if you build the right type of property, you can do very, very well as a real estate investor. So, just because it's in one of these zones, don't mark it off. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about margin when you're in that kind of business. And whether you build you know, some fancy place in a really well-to-do area, which could have high competition, and sometimes your price elasticity is a problem. Going into some of these other areas and just doing something a little more simple, you know, not only are you, you know, contributing to society, I think, and making the world a better place, they're giving you a lot of margin built in. So if you can kind of stomach the risk that you perceive you're taking in it, you know, it's something worth looking at. I'm not trying to give investment advice or say that I endorse them necessarily, but what I'm saying is that just what I've observed in my career about tax credits in some of these real estate areas, they more than compensate you for the risk in these areas, and they work with you to make sure the project gets finished. So I think they take a lot of risk off the table, personally, in that you are getting a reward versus risk proposition that's pretty good. That's not for all projects, of course, but if you're patient and you really look for the right project, you can get a risk-reward ratio that is unbelievably favorable. And just most people aren't looking at these things. So anyway, again, that's my commentary and that's my opinion, not necessarily giving advice here. So hopefully that helped with Michigan. Again, I think Michigan is one of those, you either get them or you don't. There's not a lot of gray area necessarily. The gray area comes once you've decided that you do qualify for an area. You have to look at the details to see how you actually monetize the credit. But Michigan's fairly simple. It's kind of figuring out, I think, whether you should be looking at tax credits or not. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this outdoor edition, and I'm gonna wear my Ford hat all day in honor of Michigan. I just think that we need to do that. It's very American. So okay, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.